Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Dankin with TNMNews and DZTV, and welcome to another Todd Talk. I'm excited today because we have a group of folks who are uh, major league cannabis advocates, and we're going to talk to them in just a second. First up is Heather Manis, also known as Nurse Heather, who is a native of New Mexico. She's a registered nurse. She specializes in all aspects of cannabis care, and she began her career as a registered nurse providing psychiatric home care to patients in New Mexico. She has extensive background and experience in natural healing modalities and herbal remedies, some of which she obtained from her close association with Hispanic and Native American healers in New Mexico. Her vast knowledge and holistic approach to individualized patient care have been the cornerstone of her success as a nurse, an educator, an entrepreneur, and of course, a promoter of health. And she's a huge part of the Cannabis Nurses Network and host of Basics with Nurse Heather on DZTV. And that is a brand new whole plant network featuring education, healing stories, science, and culture told through the people who actually live it. So, Heather, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Todd. I'm excited to be here. This will be a
We
great
are
conversation today.
for sure. And then next up is Heather's handsome husband, Ken Sobel, who is an attorney, a consultant, and a medical marijuana advocate. He has owned, operated, and consulted with medical cannabis businesses all over the country, including California, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Washington, Oregon, Massachusetts, Nevada, and even in the United States Virgin Islands over the past 15 years. Ken was the founding member and board member for the three major dispensary advocacy groups in Arizona, and he led the fight to defeat the legislators' effort to repeal or weaken the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. And Ken currently serves as the senior attorney and consultant for Genesis International and has represented clients all over the United States and Canada on all businesses and legal aspects of cannabis. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Todd. Pleasure to be with you.
And pleasure to have you, of course. And then our special guest is Jim Bartel. Who's Jim Bartel? Well, he is the father of Ryan Bartel and sponsor of Senate Bill 311, also known as Ryan's Law. It's the Compassionate Access to Medical Cannabis in Healthcare Facilities Act. And Jim has been championing this law for several years now. What happened was Ryan, who is Jim's son, he called Jim and his wife to tell him that he'd been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and only had a few weeks to live. Of course, they were devastated because the cancer was very aggressive, chemotherapy was not working, and Ryan was in a lot of pain. Well, in the hospital, as per usual, they had him on morphine and fentanyl, two very serious opioids. And because of those two drugs, he was asleep most of the time just to deal with the pain. Well, that lasted for about 4 weeks until Ryan finally asked for some cannabis. But it's prohibited in hospitals. And this was clearly a problem that needed attention immediately. After receiving some cannabis, he went from being asleep most of the time with fentanyl and morphine to being alert and being able to communicate, text, talk to friends, have visitors while he was on cannabis medicines. Ryan sadly died a few short weeks later, but he did have the time to be with and talk with his family and friends without opioids. And Jim went into action. He felt something had to be done so that didn't happen to other people who wanted a higher quality of life near the end of their life. So he initiated the legislation called Ryan's Law. So, Jim, welcome to the show. We appreciate all that you're doing and all that you've done, and appreciate you coming on today.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
All right. So let's get right into it. And first up for you, Heather, given your expertise in natural healing modalities and psychiatric care, how do you see cannabis fitting into a comprehensive, holistic care plan, particularly when traditional pharmaceuticals have failed or caused really bad side effects?
Yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science, right? I mean, it's cannabis is so beneficial for so many different symptoms that utilizing cannabis as part of a holistic care plan is a no-brainer in my opinion. And, Ryan's story really illuminates that. And he he did better once he got off of the pharmaceuticals and was able to communicate with his family. And the truth is, we've even seen as Ryan's Law was passed first here in California, at UCLA, the nurses up there did a research study to see how is Ryan's Law working. And what it basically says, and this is just Heather's version of what it says, but it basically said, look, as nurses, we're smart. We're able to allow a patient to use their own cannabis, and it works. Our patients feel better, and when our patients feel better, our job is easier. And so I see cannabis fitting in to a holistic care plan smoothly, simply, and it can be implemented without a lot of trouble. So I'm so grateful to these two gentlemen, Ken and Jim, for taking this on, for writing this law, for pushing it forward, not just in California, but state after state after state is starting to adopt Ryan's Law and provide cannabis, allow patients to use cannabis that they would be using at home. They can now use it in a hospital setting, and it is working for patients, and they have that quality of life that otherwise would not be there for them in their last days.
Yeah, I think it is a no-brainer as well. I'm a 62-year-old guy and I'm not on any medication, right? I eat healthy and I use cannabis. And that is my healthcare, right? And the fact that it is illegal to use in hospitals where is just crazy. So I agree with you 100%. Um, so, Jim, what was the most challenging aspect of navigating the healthcare system regarding Ryan's request for cannabis? And what specific provisions in Ryan's law aim to really prevent other families from facing similar struggles?
Okay. Thank you for the questions. The most difficult thing has been to get around the arguments that it's a federal prohibition because of Schedule One standing of cannabis.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that's now changed. Originally, because of the president's executive order a few months ago to move it from Schedule One to Schedule Three. It took a few months for that to be implemented, but it's now been implemented. So we no longer, when we're talking to senators and representatives in various states, it's no longer an issue. They can't use that as a crutch for or a reason for not wanting Ryan's Law to move forward. We've now eliminated that issue. Uh, Everything else was vetted long years ago when Ken and I worked in California uh, to get it passed here. Um, and it's now really pretty much an open door. It's just a matter now of talking to people, getting sponsors of the legislation in the states, even conservative states. We have sponsors in Kentucky, Mississippi, Louisiana, and then we have 10 states now, including California, that have actually adopted Ryan's Law in those states. So we have 27 states to go, but most of those states have actually introduced the legislation already. It's just a matter of going through the various processes to get it adopted.
Nice, nice. And when Ryan first requested cannabis while he was in the hospital, was that a big controversy? And was it, how are we going to do this? What's going to happen? Are we going to get in trouble?
Yeah. Well, when we first went up the day that Ryan called, and we went up to Seattle where he was, um, he was asleep, and the nurse said his pain was so excruciating that as soon as he woke up, they'd had to give him a shot of fentanyl because we started with morphine. It wasn't strong enough, so we added fentanyl, uh, and all that does is put you to sleep almost immediately. So that was his condition when we arrived. She said, "I said, when can we talk to him?" She said, "You probably can't because we have to keep him sedated 24/7 pretty much." So I talked to his oncologist about replacing the um, fentanyl with medical cannabis. He said, "Well, I would support it, but the hospital has a policy against it." So he tried to get an appeal to their various boards and the hospital to get it exempted and try to allow Ryan to have it as a one-time thing. And they after 4 weeks, or 3 weeks, they said no, we're not going to allow it. So that's when we worked to find a hospital in Seattle that would allow it. We got him transferred a week later, and then he brought in the medicines, gave him his first dose, a tincture under the tongue, and he woke up the next morning wide awake, pain-free. And for his last 3 weeks before he died, he started having visitors, was able to talk to his family every day. He had a 9-year-old son at the time, came in every day after school. We just locked the two of them together in the room for an hour, and that was probably the most important thing that we did for Ryan, having that special time with his son the last 3 weeks. So what that did was, so once we got it adopted in California, that just motivated me to, and that was no easy task. That took three years to get it adopted in California. Uh, but we did, and now it just motivates us even more to work at the other 36 states that allow cannabis in the states to implement it and make it much easier for families to get through the last few weeks of their loved ones' time.
Ken, from a legal and advocacy perspective, what's the single biggest remaining regulatory hurdle in ensuring patient access to medical cannabis across different state lines? And how does the current federal situation complicate your work?
So that's really a huge, question to ask right at this very moment in time, Todd, as I'm sure you'd expect. And in the past, I would have started out by describing the long-winded history of how we got prohibition and how we've begun to come out of it. But your listeners would probably be turning that off and say, I'm not interested in that. But understand that as far as Ryan's law is concerned, it would operate under the same premise that has made cannabis legal medically in 40 states, 5 US territories, and adult legal in about 26 other states, or the same 26 states of those 40. And all of those same potential challenges would have existed even though it was categorized as Schedule 1 before. So the difficulty's been explaining that to legislators. So when I'm talking to Connecticut, they're like, oh my God, the the hospital association is telling us the sky is going to fall if we pass Ryan's law, and I'm telling them they're going to get sued by everybody. And I say, no, you've had your own cannabis program for 13 years, and you've never been sued once by the federal government. And in fact, none of those 40 states has been sued by the federal government during the entire history that they've had a medical cannabis program. But what happened recently is huge. And I can't stress that enough. And I just want to read quickly. And I know, oh my God, he's going to read something, but I do need to read this because this comes from the interim U.S. Attorney General. And such words I never thought would ever be spoken, but this is a direct quote from his order. This action, meaning moving it towards rescheduling it towards Schedule 3, recognizes the longstanding regulation of medical marijuana by state governments and a need for the common sense approach to this reality. Now, just 10 years ago, we litigated cases in Northern California that actually stood for the proposition that the federal government had to stay away from states that had a state regulated program like California and 39 other states. But to hear this now come directly from the mouths of the federal government means we've entered into essentially a phase where prohibition is a thing of the past and legalization and regulation is a thing of the future from this day forward. So, yeah, we'll still have some legislators like Virginia recently, just on the eve of getting this rescheduling decision. They were saying, oh my God, we can't allow Ryan's law because we have Schedule 1. And they really wouldn't listen to the fact that, hey, man, you've had Schedule 1 and we've got 40 states as examples have never been sued for it. And I would just say that Jim is my hero, and he is an amazing man in this community, beloved in San Diego. And we've met and worked with him and got to know him pretty well before young Ryan, unfortunately, had got diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And he's been our hero. And we put together Ryan's Law, and I'm fully invested into this 100%. I give all my time for free because this is really important. And to have 10 states now that have adopted this just very common sense thing. When someone is critically ill and on the verge of death, they need an answer now that they can use cannabis, which is very effective for pain, just like it worked for young
Yeah.
Ryan. And to provide that additional quality time with the parents and the friends and his child. And it's just so important for that to be a mandate. What we have now, of course, is the Hospital Association, which tends to have a key to the governor's door or a key to the legislator's door that Jim and I, frankly, don't have, nor Nurse Heather.
Right.
And they're able to get in and make that demand to not pass Ryan's Law. So that's what we'll be working with in the next 30 states. But it's an honor to work with Jim and to make sure that no one ever suffers that situation that the Bartel family suffered ever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And the best thing that when you read that Attorney General quote is said that they were going to do common sense laws, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that it just proves that everything they've been doing up to this point, right, has not been common sense.
I think Nurse Heather and I squealed when we read that language. It was like, oh,
right.
common sense. Okay.
I've always said about cannabis, if it helps one person, then that's enough to start studying it. And that's enough to administer it to other people, right? If it just helps one person. So that's great that you guys are moving forward with this, and hospitals are getting on board. So Heather, as cannabis becomes more mainstream, what ethical responsibilities do you think healthcare providers like registered nurses and legal consultants have in educating patients and potential interactions between cannabis and other medications?
That's a great question, Todd. And honestly, from my perspective, healthcare providers need to educate themselves before they try to educate anybody else. And, one of the things that we see consistently when we're go at these hearings trying to get Ryan's Law passed is we'll see healthcare providers that are uneducated who are fighting against it. Even the hospital association, like Ken was talking about. And the truth is, Schedule 3 is changing everything because now this Schedule 3 drug must be taught, right? So healthcare providers need to know about it because it's not a Schedule 1 drug, illegal. Now it's a Schedule 3 medication that they need to be knowledgeable about. And so although there's a lot about the Schedule 3 that I am frankly not that happy about, I am thrilled that it's now putting cannabis right in the faces of medical professionals so that they have to learn about it. And even more importantly, maybe than learning about the plant, is learning about the human biology of the endocannabinoid system, because healthcare providers need to know about the human body, right? Patients need to know about their own body and how they can upregulate and support and heal themselves, or, as healthcare providers help patients to heal. And the endocannabinoid system is the largest receptor signaling system in the human body, responsible for homeostasis and balance between all other body systems. So having that knowledge is so important, not only for the patients, but for healthcare providers, and to have an understanding of why the cannabis plant works so well for such an array of symptoms and disease processes. So it is our duty. It is ethically responsible for healthcare providers. And quite frankly, nurses have been leading the charge in this education for decades. So I'm proud to be standing here as a representative of a nurse and the Cannabis Nurses Network, who has been educating healthcare providers and nurses for so long now. And Ryan's Law is now in hospitals and healthcare facilities. So again, that law is pushing nurses and healthcare providers to learn about these things. And it's really exciting times.
And to make some common sense decisions on care, right? You know,
100%.
yeah. When you're in the hospital system and you're a patient, a cannabis patient, it's difficult to express your feelings about opioids and all the medications that they use there and how you don't want them because currently the medical system is not educated on cannabis. I mean, I had some skin cancer removed, and they gave me this cream that said, "Here's some petroleum jelly to put on your wound." And I said, thank you, but I don't really want a petroleum product on my wound. I prefer hemp seed oil." And they're like, "Well, can't recommend hemp seed oil. I don't, you know." And I just couldn't believe the lack of education that these doctors have. Right? They're trained in medical school to treat a symptom, right, with some sort of medication, and they don't really treat the patient, right? They're treating the symptom. And I think cannabis changes that, don't you?
100%. It does. And what's so neat about cannabis is that it's all about patient empowerment. And so the work that I've been doing as a nurse all this time is I'm not healing people. I'm not moving mountains. What I'm doing is telling a patient, it's okay to try this. If it works for you, that's fantastic. It's all about patient empowerment. And what you see is that patients will use cannabis in a certain way for a while, and then they might change and use it in a different way, or they may change and not use it at all, and then they may come back to it. But giving patients that autonomy, that choice, and the power to do what they feel is best for them, just like Ryan, he wanted that choice. Yeah. And the first hospital wouldn't allow it. So Jim, fighting for his son, making sure that they found a hospital that would allow Ryan to make the choice, have that autonomy. It is so important. And I am just so thrilled that we now have 10 states in the United States who are allowing patients to make that choice and have that autonomy. It's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Jim, beyond the immediate relief that Ryan experienced, what message do you hope Ryan's law sends to hospitals and long-term care facilities about patient autonomy, like Heather was saying, and quite frankly, the quality of life?
Yeah. Or specifically, your Ryan's law, as written by myself and Ken, requires, and that's the key word, all hospitals to allow terminally ill patients to use medical cannabis for treatment or pain relief. And that's our key message in the legislation. A lot of states have argued that, not only on the Schedule 1 issue, but also on the language of require rather than just allow Ryan's law to
Right.
be implemented. And it's allowed now, technically. I mean, a hospital could have a policy just like the second hospital in Seattle had to allow it. So that's why we put in the language to require that they allow the patients to use it. That's
right.
the game changer, right? Yeah.
Right. And now that the Schedule 1 has changed, do you think that's going to open the floodgates?
Absolutely. There's really most of the opposition, as Ken alluded to, is coming from the hospital associations who are just uneducated on the benefits of cannabis. And then secondly, they're afraid of the boogeyman in DC coming down hard and eliminating their Medicare and Medicaid funding. And that's just not the case anymore. It wasn't the case before, but now it's in writing that it's not the case.
Right.
We did 10 states, all knowing that it was Schedule 1, but they weren't afraid of it because, as the first hospital in 2018 with Ryan, the second hospital, knew that they were going to lose their Medicare and Medicaid funding and reimbursement. So things seem to be realigning for the positive. I couldn't have done this without the help of Ken and Heather. I mean, they're great friends and they're amazing advocates. They participate with me on many of my calls with key senators and representatives that are problems that need some further education or support, and they're able to answer all their questions. And I just couldn't do that. I don't have the expertise or the background to be able to do it. They do.
Right.
Heather was the one that really found the nurses in Seattle to work with me and to assist Ryan can help write the law. This is how we're now uh, sharing with other states throughout the country. So uh, they're amazing people. As I mentioned earlier to Todd, I've got 10 interns from San Diego State University Political Science Department that come in every week, and they do all the heavy lifting. I'm just the window dressing. They set up all the meetings. They do all the research, and then I just show up for the meetings. So uh, again, it's a few people, but it's people who are committed to this work,
Yeah.
and it's growing now. We're not afraid to talk to hospital associations. We have all the facts in our favor now. We've vetted every possible issue that could be out there. We did that pretty much early in California, but the one that lingered was the Schedule One issue. So that's now been
Right.
eliminated. So really, it should be smooth sailing moving forward.
Got it. And I would
And
agree with your statement a second ago that Ken and Heather are incredible humans. So thank you guys for all that you do and all that you've done to help Ryan's Law get passed. So
well, you're
Ken,
too kind, Todd. I just let me just interject just two
sure,
quick
sure,
points, and thank you for that, and thank you, Jim. But when you see an injustice like this that we've had, it was impossible for us not to be fully on board with this. And it's called the Compassionate Use Act, aka Ryan's Law. But what it is undone, and you just almost put your finger on it with Schedule 3. But before the Schedule 3 movement, Ryan's Law began to open these doors within the hospital and medical communities. So it not only had the effect to help resolve this terrible human issue of patients who are dying, but it also forced the hospitals to take another look at cannabis, to become more educated in it. And Nurse Heather and I actually did grand rounds with the largest healthcare hospital care provider in Connecticut and educated the doctors via Ryan's Law on the safety and efficacy of cannabis. And all of our research, and I've done hundreds, maybe thousands of articles at this point, all the medical research shows that cannabis is a gentle plant medicine. It's safe and effective. Just like Willie Nelson says, nobody's ever died of an overdose. That the only possible way that could happen is if a bale of it fell on their head.
that's right.
And
That's right.
and so as we move through the process with Nurse Heather, educating people that literally cannabis is safer than aspirin. More people die of toxic overdose of aspirin than they do of none for cannabis. So it's a labor of love that we do here with
Yeah.
Ryan's Law, and now, as mentioned, with Schedule 3 opening up, it's going to be, I believe, the end of prohibition.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think Bill Murray said one time the most difficult thing about cannabis is getting caught with it. Right.
Right.
I think he said that was the most dangerous thing about
the most
cannabis,
dangerous
was getting
part.
caught
That's
with
right.
it.
That's exactly
And
right.
would you like a little interesting story? I followed the
Sure.
NFL, and they have the concussion problems with their
Yep.
football players,
Yeah.
and more serious conditions that follow that. Well, now the NFL about a year ago actually raised the level of cannabis that would have to be detected in a player for them to be in violation of their drug
Hmm.
policy. They raised it to 350 nanograms per milliliter. Now, I know the state of Washington shows intoxication of cannabis at 5 nanograms per milliliter. And the international um, doping organizations use 150 nanograms per
Hmm.
milliliter. NFL is now at 350 nanograms per milliliter, which you actually could, I believe, be smoking a joint and testing at the same time and not hit 350
Ah.
nanograms per milliliter. So they
That's
recognize how important
right.
that cannabis is, especially for brain injury. I mean, the
Yeah.
studies that US got for their patent showed that cannabis was a powerful neuroprotectant, protecting the brain.
Yeah.
So I think even the NFL now tacitly acknowledges that cannabis is safe and effective for brain injury.
Right. Yeah. I interviewed Ricky Williams a while back, and he's famously was cut from the Dolphins for smoking
Right.
cannabis. Then he famously went back. But when I was talking to him and asking him why he did what he did, he just said, "I was in pain. You run the ball 800 times, a year, and these big giant dudes jump on top of you and throw you to the ground. It hurts. And the only thing that helped him keep his head together, and relieve the pain was cannabis. It's just such a no-brainer. And you see other sports leagues too, like the UFC, Major League Baseball, the NBA. They're all adopting cannabis laws and rules and really allowing the athletes to use this panacea because, quite honestly, it helps so many things and for so many people. It's just so obvious. But it's nice when big organizations like these major league, sports organizations also see the need for allowing their players and their folks to use cannabis because it just makes sense. There we are with the common sense again, right?
Well,
Right.
and to
How do you
bring in
think?
common sense again,
Yeah,
one of the things about Ryan's Law that's so beautiful is that it is narrow in its focus. Now, a lot of advocates, when we started this, Jim knows, advocates would come out and go, well, we need everybody, all patients who are in a hospital to be able to use their cannabis. And we agree with that, right? But to get the law passed, we needed to say terminally ill patients like Ryan. We wanted to be very specific in the people that we were targeting, those people who don't have time to screw around. These are terminally ill patients. They have days, weeks left. And so one of the things about common sense is that even in the southern states, Louisiana, Mississippi, when we talk to them and we say, look, we are talking about terminally ill patients here. We're not talking about everybody. We're talking about terminally ill patients. They say, we understand that. We get that. This is quality of life. And Jim tells the story of one of our legislators here in California who never votes positively on cannabis. And he stood up, right, Jim? And he said, this isn't about cannabis. This is about quality of life at the end of life. And I'm here for it. These people need to be able to make a choice on whatever they want. And I say, they want a cheeseburger, give them a cheeseburger. If they want cannabis, give them cannabis. Whatever it is that somebody wants at the end of their life, they have the right to ask for that and receive it.
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Um, Jim, is that why you did all of this? For that reason?
Uh, Probably the most important reason was to prevent other families having go through what we went through for 4 weeks and not being able to have any conversations with Ryan. That's the main
Yeah,
reason.
right.
Secondly, it's been my therapy. I don't do counseling very well, so this is my way of kind of easing my own personal issues. And then thirdly, it's it's common sense. Why haven't we been
Common
doing this
sense.
for decades? I mean, why now? Why did it take Ryan's Law to open people's minds and hearts? This is about compassionate care. It's not about anything else. It's about people who are dying who need a pain relief so they can have quality time with their loved ones, and that's what it's all about. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
love
that
you,
quality of
message.
Jim.
life is underrated for sure. The quality of life at the end of life, right, is underrated, and it is quite amazing that cannabis can solve a lot of those problems, and
Mhm.
it's just such a great thing that you are doing for sure. Ken, you've
Well,
consulted in.
it's also one more thing. It's also a
Sure.
legacy for Ryan. It gives some meaning to his death. He was way too young to, and had a family to,
Yeah.
to die. He was very healthy, great athlete, in great shape right up to the time of being hospitalized. Um, he was a good person, and then I struggled with my faith in terms of dealing
Sure.
with his death at such a young age, and for such a great person. He taught in the Seattle School District, working with autistic children, and loved his job,
Mhm.
and he was very good at it. And So for those reasons, is why this keeps me motivated every single day to do this. But I couldn't do it without the help of Ken and Heather and my insurance.
No, well, that's great because Ryan lives on with every hospital that
Yeah,
accepts this bill, and every state that accepts
yeah,
this bill, and that is
it's a
great.
legacy
That's
for him. Yeah.
for sure, for sure. Ken, you've consulted in lots of states, right? What is the one key lesson that we can learn from an established cannabis market that states with newer programs should immediately adopt regarding patient protections?
I don't know if it necessarily Todd falls into patient protections, but I think the next level of advocacy is to ensure that all states allow people to grow their own cannabis, because that's the greatest protection that we have from cannabis becoming just another commodity that is taxed almost out of its existence and priced almost above the level that people who really
Right.
need it and can afford it. And Nurse Heather's been a passionate advocate for that. So you have to start with we need to have in every state that adopts a cannabis program, they have to have the right to grow. And I wrote that into the bill for the Virgin Islands, and that turned out to be a pretty high plant count for them, 12 plants total.
Right.
And I think the second thing is going to be the confiscatory taxes, even on the state level, that really cannabis is a medicine. I mean, there's no way around it. If you understand any level of biology or you do the basic, even basic research, it's a medicine. And so it should be taxed like medicine, which is not taxed.
That's right.
And these are the two biggest barriers, in my opinion, that we need. The regulations are overburdensome and they were always done as a compromise. Like, here, we'll give you this prohibited substance that has been prohibited and criminalized for many years. We'll give you that, but we're going to regulate it so much and we're going to tax it so much that it's going to create its own barriers and
Right.
essentially fosters the ongoing black market.
Yep.
Uh, that's what I
Yeah.
think. I'm
And
not sure what you think.
no, I agree with what you're saying. It's interesting because, as you're mentioning, the price of cannabis, especially because of taxes, it's literally out of control. It's literally out of control. And you're right. The folks who do need it the most, right, have trouble with that acquisition um, of the cannabis. Heather, how do you think the nursing profession can better integrate education on cannabis and other plant medicines into their regular curriculum? And,
Oh, that's
you
it's
know,
great. Great question. And they're starting to, right? So in 2023, the American Nurses Association actually deemed cannabis nursing as a specialty in nursing. This was huge, right? Meanwhile, in 2018, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing put out a special it was like a special publication that was national nursing guidelines for the care of a patient using medical cannabis. And so we've had this information literally in publication from the highest levels since 2018. However, it hasn't trickled down to really get into the curriculum yet. I do know that there are some moves with the American Nurses Association to put policies in place to start implementing endocannabinoid system and cannabis education into nursing curriculum. This is going to be a big deal. And why they're not just doing it, I don't know. But I guess, nurses have to be forced to do things sometimes. But I will say that the nurses are ahead of the doctors. So this information needs to not just come from the nurses, it also needs to happen at the physician level. But it is happening. Us at the Cannabis Nurses Network, we've been educating nurses since 2015 on all of these things. So the information is there. It's not rocket science. It just takes a intellectually curious person to come and gather that information. And I'll tell you, when I first learned about the endocannabinoid system at a conference in Tucson, Arizona in 2012, I just went, whoa. This is why cannabis works so well. And it made a lot of things make sense for me. So it's so important that nurses learn about the endocannabinoid system and cannabinoid therapeutics and the proper care for a patient who's using cannabis. It's easy for them to receive this information, absorb this information, and implement it. I did want to say one other thing about what Ken was speaking about, the cultivation rights for people to have in general, for patients and adults, right? We all can grow tomatoes in our garden. That doesn't mean that we don't go to the store and still buy tomatoes in off season, or if we have, our tomatoes don't grow well, we still will go. And so one of the things that we do see in the state regulated market is that the dispensaries will sometimes be the ones saying, oh no, we don't want patients to have the right to grow because that will take money out of our pocket. We've seen that not be the case. Patients, there is therapeutic value in gardening, and there is especially therapeutic value in growing your own medicine. And no patient is going to be able to grow so much cannabis that they never go to a dispensary and purchase something again. And if they do, good for them, right? That's fine, but they would definitely be the exception. The other argument that we hear from state legislators many times, or the police, is, oh, well, if you let people grow cannabis, there's going to be a huge black market. That's not the truth either, because when you have the specific, like Ken said, 12 plants, that's a big number. A lot of the states have 4 plants or 6 plants that you can grow. So this isn't like you're growing fields and fields of cannabis that you're going to be selling into the black market. It means you're going to grow enough, hopefully, you're a good enough grower that you'll get a harvest. But a lot of patients, what I saw was they would plant the seed, the plant would grow a little bit, and then something would happen and they didn't even get a decent harvest. Or if they did get a decent harvest, they messed something up in the curing process, right? And so it's so, not that it's difficult to grow cannabis, but to quality cannabis takes some skill. And it might take a person a few seasons to get good at it. There is no reason under the sun why a human person should be restricted from trying to grow a plant. And so I will stand on that. And I believe that Schedule 3 is going to complicate the home grow rights. And so I want to make sure that as we move into these new scheduling, that we preserve the rights for people to be able to grow this plant in their backyard, just as they would a tomato. So I just wanted to get that out there on the record.
No, you're absolutely right. It is funny how as new states come on board, that home grow is fought. Everybody fights that home grow when you're right. Everyone's not going to grow it. Everyone can't grow it. It usually takes, like you said, 3 or 4 harvests before you get it right. And plants, especially cannabis plants, they need attention, right? They know what to do, but they need attention, and they don't take weekends off, they don't take holidays off, and sometimes it does become difficult to grow cannabis. But if somebody wants to do it, why shouldn't they? You're right, just like tomatoes. Now, if you guys could instantly change one perception the public or the medical community holds about cannabis, what would it be and why? Any of you can answer that.
Well, I always say is that all cannabis is medical cannabis, and everyone who uses cannabis uses it for a medical reason, whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
And so fundamentally, the notion that this plant is medicinal, that it benefits a broad range of symptoms and conditions. I mean, literally, probably one of the broadest bandwidths of any medicine that's out there. And so we have to, again, extinguish this fear of it that was brought on by prohibition, which had a racist underbelly, and move back into a more scientific and understanding approach. Because, I tell folks, you can simply read about the human endocannabinoid system. It's a big, long word, but just read about the human ECS. Just Google it, just do the Wikipedia version. And that's what you'll come away with. And we've just seen it in one study after another that CBD is good and THC is good. And those two together, the natural plant is much better than anything else. And so, like I said, it's a broad spectrum of those conditions and symptoms that it can benefit. And so, getting that understanding and getting past the Reagan era of just say no is probably still the biggest challenge I think that we face.
Yeah. 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 I always used to say, don't just say no, thank you. Right. so,
Yeah, yeah,
um, so, Jim, obviously it's been a struggle to talk to these senators and legislators about changing their laws. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to pass some kind of, compassionate access legislation in their states?
Well, I think that our track record is speaks for itself. Where it's been adopted, it's working. People are benefiting. Families are happy. They can share time with their loved ones. Uh, there's really no reason. I mean, the only reason that was out there was the Schedule One argument. We had an argument for it. We had a response to it, but it wasn't strong enough to overturn the opposition. So now with uh, Schedule Three designation, the door's opened. We're talking about compassionate care. We're not talking about addiction or anything else. We're talking about quality of life for people who are terminally ill and have a few weeks to live. And that seems to resonate even with the more conservative states. We have bill sponsors, and like I said earlier, Louisiana, Mississippi, Kentucky, uh, it's Tennessee. It's just the barriers are dying away, and it's just up to us to keep the fight going and educate people and get their commitment, and then see it through. It's a long process. It's not an easy task to take on. Every state has their own timeline. They have their own issues. So it's you have to be committed to it. And obviously, Heather and Ken have been able to stay with it with me for all these years, and it's paying off.
Yeah.
You
yep,
can never
No, which
give
is
absolutely.
great. So
you
it's
can
And
never
really all
give
Todd,
up.
there's
about
a
sticking to
Ryan's
it.
and Todd, there's a Ryan's Law Foundation website, and there's the Cannabis Nurses Network website. Nurse Heather's put on there a lot of information and the implementation. We even have a plan in there when the state does adopt Ryan's Law and how they can implement it with forms and suggestions. So anybody who's listening to your wonderful podcast and gets that motivation of, hey, I want this for my state, please feel free to interface with Ryan's Law Foundation, the Cannabis Nurses Network, and we'll help you get started. And Jim is a genius when it comes to being able to, I don't know. They used to say tact was the ability to tell someone to go straight to hell and make them feel happy to be on their way. And I'm not saying about that, Jim, but other than he is one of the most tactful, brilliant communicators. And so anybody who reaches out to us we'll take up arms with them,
Yeah,
and we'll get that passed in
Awesome.
their state.
yeah. We're not going to give
And
up.
we will
This is
put
a mission.
those,
We're on a mission.
yeah, and we'll put those websites in the text right
Okay.
below this video so you can check out those two websites for sure. And then finally, looking ahead, let's say 5 years, how do you predict the legal and medical landscapes of plant medicine will evolve, especially with THC and then non THC cannabinoids and then other psychedelics eventually?
I'll jump in here to start off on the medical side. With Schedule 3, it's going to open up research. Now, let's be clear, there's a ton of research on cannabis, but for decades, they've been looking for the harm. Let me tell you, if there was real harm, we would have already found it. So what my
Yeah.
hope is that with this change in schedule, that we will be able to really look at the benefits and be able to examine that. Now, I have a belief that whole plant cannabis and the plant, that is one thing. And that FDA approved drugs that will come out that are targeting the endocannabinoid system, that's something entirely different. My hope is that healthcare providers, nurses in particular, will have an understanding of both the FDA medications, how they work, as well as whole plant and the choices of patients to be able to use this as a plant medicine. The other thing that I think is really exciting that I want medical professionals to understand is that the endocannabinoid system can be supported, manipulated, worked with, upregulated, not just with the use of cannabinoids, but through other therapies and other holistic approaches. You know, for years, we've looked at holistic therapies like acupuncture or yoga or meditation or breathing or mindfulness. We look at these things and we go, wow, it works, but we don't quite know why. And through research, we're beginning to understand that these therapies are targeting and supporting the endocannabinoid system. And I think it's so important that we understand that the endocannabinoid system not only can be supplemented by cannabinoids and this plant cannabis, but it can also be supported by these other holistic therapies. And so that's what I would like to see happen in the next 5 years.
Gotcha. Anything, Ken or Jim, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say, just kind of building on what Nurse Heather said. I mean, I don't know if it's 5 years, Todd, but just like a story you were telling us, I'm not sure if we were on there or off, but when at home someday a child burns their finger and the mom reaches for a topical cannabis product that we know will work because the skin is chock full of receptor sites that are activated by cannabis. And they'll reach for that as to heal that. Or a woman who's suffering from a difficult menstrual cycle will reach for cannabis because that helps that. So, I mean, we get to the point where cannabis becomes a home remedy and folks are able to make all of those home remedies at home just by finding good teachers like Nurse Heather and others, who teach how to prepare those things.
Sure.
And I think that'll happen someday. That may be more than 5 years, but someday the level of knowledge will reach that point.
Yeah, almost like before 1937, where cannabis
Yep.
was a standard on everybody's shelf.
Absolutely.
Right? And finally, Jim, what do you think it's going to take for Ryan's Law to be across the country and then across the world?
I can probably speak about the world better than I can, but he operates at a much broader scale. But in terms of the states, I think we have momentum right now, and Schedule 3 designation will even accelerate that. We're breaking down the barriers that we had originally. We're talking to hospital associations now because they see us coming. They're not going to stop us. So it's just a matter of sharing our experience, working out their concerns to their satisfaction, and relieving any concerns that the legislators have because of the hospital association opposition. So I think the momentum's in our favor at this point. I think by the end of 2028, 29 maybe, because of the various timelines that each state has, we'll have Ryan's Law in all the states that we've targeted.
Well, that's a good and reasonable goal, even though we all want it to happen faster, right?
Yes.
as always, because people are sick and people are dying every single day, and if we can help them with a better quality of life in those last few weeks of life, we should be doing that for sure.
That's what it's all about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to add
Yeah.
in regards to Ryan's Law or legalization in general?
I'll just tell the other states we're coming. We're coming. Get ready. Ryan's
That's
Law
right. Look out.
is
That's
coming your way. We want the support of the people in those states. We want the support of those legislators. We want the support of the hospital associations. This is common sense. And we're asking for your support, your assistance, and your energy to move this forward. This makes sense. And think about if it was you or your family member, you would want those options to be available for you or them. And that's what we're asking for. So get on board.
Yeah. We did have a breakthrough in Delaware about a month ago. The Hospital Association in Delaware actually came out in support of Ryan's Law. That was the first
Oh,
time.
Wow.
nice. Awesome.
So I think that's an indication of where things are headed.
Well, I think everything is going in the right direction. And thanks to folks like you three, it's making it easier for the rest of us to really navigate the interesting and complicated cannabis industry. So I, again, would like to thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your education, because I've always said good education creates good legislation. And it sounds like these hospitals just need to be educated, and the public just needs to be educated. And
Yeah.
here's the good news: the education's out there, and it's getting easier and easier to find. You can definitely find it on DZTV, where you can find Nurse Heather really explaining all of the intricacies of the cannabis plant. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining me on today's Todd Talk. Jim, congratulations on your successes. And again, thank you again for your advocacy. And you are doing a great job. And Ryan's name and legacy will live on forever and ever and ever, thanks to all the work that you've put in. Ken, obviously, thanks for everything that you've done over the years and writing laws and helping out folks all over the country. And of course, Heather, we've known each other for several years, and I've seen you advocate and help thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So thank you for everything that you do. And we really appreciate you guys and appreciate your time today to share this information with the rest of the world.
Thank you, Ted.
So
Appreciate being here.
yeah, my pleasure. And again, we'll put all the websites down at the bottom of this video where all the text is. So make sure you log in, you check them out, and you help advocate for the passing of Ryan's law and other good common sense laws. So again, folks, it's Jim Bartel, that's Ken Sobel, and Heather Manis. Thanks for joining me here on TNM News. My name's Todd Dankin, and we'll see you next time.